Hello everyone, I'm back today with another video. This is going to be a different type of video. This is going to be more of a strategy discussion video. I had a suggestion in one of the comments of my videos not too long ago, probably a couple weeks ago by now, asked me, hey, can you make a setup about setup don'ts, so things that you should probably not do when you're making a setup. And I thought about it, I'm like, okay, I can try to do that. I'm not the best Stratego player, I'm not the best setup maker, but I can try to do that. I would appreciate it, after watching this video, if you guys could tell me in the comments if this is helpful, if this is not helpful, if you already knew all this stuff, and, this wasn't really useful. None of these things I'm going to say are going to be too crazy. It's mostly just going to be things that I try to follow, boundaries that I give myself when I'm making a setup. So first thing I would say to not do, number one would be, do not bomb in pieces. So, bombing in pieces for fakes like this is completely useless. You can accomplish literally the same thing by doing that, okay, or by doing that. You can accomplish the exact same thing. Don't bomb in pieces. That's just a really bad idea all around, especially not for a purpose. Now, it's slightly better if you have something like this, where you bomb in a piece, but this is still really bad, and I'll explain why. If they come down with a minor, sorry, it should be like that. This is actually going to be rather common in, say, bronze or silver. Like, this is even like a featured on a Stratego website. I think it's like Ultra Stratego or something like that. This is one of the setups they suggest that, you could do. I think this is still really a bad idea, and it really bombs in a piece for nothing. Let me explain why. If a miner comes down and takes this bomb, okay, you're going to take it with your sergeant, but then whatever piece was escorting that miner is just going to take that, and they're going to run into the flag anyway. So that's not really a good idea. Also, like I said, it's just, it's bombing in a piece, which is really bad because, you can't use that piece until they take the bomb, and even if they do, that piece is usually dead instantly. Something like that is going to be better if you really want to have a flag here. Something like that, unless, of course, they scout the bomb. But I think overall it's just really not a good idea to do something like this. Now, I remember one time Sorrow, or FKS as he is occasionally known, or previously known, I should say, did something like this against a player called DC Annies, which DC Annies was actually the 2011, I believe, could be 2009, I think it's 2011, Stratego World Champion. So he's going to be a really good player. He's very good at reading pieces, and he's very good at using intuition. Sorrow used something like this. Now, against probably 99.9% of players, I would say absolutely this is a hard no. Do not do this. First of all, you're using 4 bombs when you could use 3, and you are, like, bombing in a piece, of course, and they could very easily get around that by just coming down with a minor. I think the reason he did this is just to throw DC Annies off with the formation of his setup and the formation of his bombs, because DC Annies does like to lotto when they think they have a good idea of bomb formation. Something like this is, like, even worse, okay? And I would say the last thing, like, I've actually seen a gold player do this before. This is an absolute atrocity. Do not do this. Like, something like this. Okay, first of all, it uses all 6 of your bombs, okay? And you bomb in 3 sergeants. Now, granted, they do need 2 miners to get your flag. But still, all 6 of your bombs, this entire rest of the field is lotto prone. And once they figure out and they know what you're doing, you're completely dead because they're going to lotto all this. Something like this is really bad. Okay, so moving on from bombing in pieces, number 2 thing I would say do not do is bombing off sides. So you'll see this will be pretty common in lower levels. I know a couple Platinum players do bomb off their sides, like for example Trix, who's actually had success doing this in probably mid or even upper Platinum. He might even do something like this. Like, these bombs are obvious, but he hopes you hit the bombs down here instead. He actually has success with this. I know there's another player, AWFLY, who will sometimes do this as a surprise factor against players higher than him. He'll bomb it off in this sort of fashion. I think that doing things like this, like, maybe 1 in, like, 50 games if you want to, like, throw a wrench in there because you played this person so many times. Generally, this is such a bad idea, primarily because any of these pieces you put here are, like, instantly dead, so you're, like, wasting them. And also because, really, most of all, you need this lane. You need all 3 lanes to attack down, okay? And you need all 3 lanes to advance if you can. So depriving yourself of the privilege of having all 3 and just giving yourself 2, or even worse, I've seen people bomb off both flanks before were bombed off, and they would just go in the center. That's just a horrible idea. You need all the flanks that you can get, all 3 of them. You're going to need them. Do not bomb off pieces. It's really a gift to your opponent. I will usually not diffuse unless I see a good opportunity, but I know that I can really just stack my pieces over here because I know they have to concentrate over here. Also, bombing off a side just puts a lot of bombs on the weak side, and I feel like bombs should be used to defend your flag and to make flag fakes. So I feel like this is not a good idea. So generally, you don't want to do things like that. I will give an exception for, you've played someone so many times you want to do something unexpected. Generally, it's going to be a bad idea, though. Okay, next thing, number 3, don'ts. This also applies to bombs. Usually, now, let me preface this by saying usually you don't want to put a bomb in the first 6 of these rows. I think bombs on the columns here are going to be more mainstream or more accepted. I think these are okay. Bombs in the center are just really bad because they could have a whole cluster of pieces and you just simply can't advance in the center. And the center is the most important lane. That's why palming off the center, which some players do, is a really bad idea. I would say these are okay, but I would prefer to do it here, okay, and I'll tell you why. It does the exact same thing, but you're more likely to get a better piece off of it. Only a scout is really going to discover this, maybe a captain. But it does the same thing because it's going to force your opponent to go inward, which is what you want by placing a bomb here, is for them to go toward the center of the field. But it's just not going to have it up front. You're going to get something better for this, and it's not going to restrict your mobility as much, okay? Because you're going to have 2 entrances up here, rather than if you have it here, it's the same situation as being blocked off in the center. They can have a whole cluster of pieces, and you only got 1 piece to go out there with, and it's double guarded. Here is just much better for a variety of reasons. And any bombs up here in the center is really just not a good idea. I would completely discourage doing that. The last thing I want to talk about for bombs, well, not necessarily the last thing, but the last thing exclusively pertaining to bombs, would be number 4, don't place bombs high up so that they restrict your mobility. So I would say you can have 1, maybe 2 bombs maximum in the first 2 rows. I would say this is the most acceptable bomb in the first 2 rows. You could have something like this. But once you get more crazy, if you start putting any more bombs up here, it's really going to restrict and hurt your mobility. I'll see silver players, even bronze players, that think, doing some clownery like this is a good idea. Like, no, this is a horrible idea. Once your opponent figures this stuff out, you're going to get wiped out with Lotto. And it really hurts your mobility. I think that's the number 1 thing, especially for gold and platinum players. You need all your pieces, and you need them to be accessible in all parts of the board. So if you put a bunch of bombs everywhere, you can't move in that space. That can even be a gift to your opponent. I would say usually 1, maybe a max of 2 if, I don't know, if you like that playstyle. But I would really never, almost never put more than 1 bomb up here. I prefer to put them in the back rows, make flag fakes out of them, make decoys. I think that's a much better use of your bombs, and it leaves you all this space to move around in. Okay, next thing I want to talk about, this is the last thing, probably the last thing about bombs, we'll see, is high pieces next to bombs. Now this is going to be a little bit more advanced. Probably not everyone has thought about this. Probably everyone's thought about the other things I said. But these are just things that I go through when I think about making a setup. So let's say you have a situation like this. Okay, these are your opponent's pieces, and this is you over here. Okay, so this is really bad for you. Let's say your opponent moves their general down here, and you're gonna scout. They're gonna scout this colonel. Your colonel is completely dead because you move that minor up. It doesn't matter. You're 2 squared. What you want to do is not have this bomb here. You want to have a moving piece on both sides of a piece, like a major or a colonel, I would say, in the 2nd or 3rd row. Have a moving piece on both sides of that piece. That way, if they have a general here and they scout this, you can suicide that piece and save your colonel. I'll probably put majors and colonels next to bombs before, just not thinking about it. But generally, it's going to be something, this is more an upper level tip. Generally, it's going to be something you're going to want to avoid because that can be dangerous, especially in the late game. So that is that. So, yeah, don't put high pieces like majors, colonels. I think captain and lower is okay. I wouldn't put general, major, or colonel next to a bomb. Okay, next thing that I want to talk about is open flags. Okay, so I am not a huge fan of open flags. I'm generally not going to do open flags, but I would say it's acceptable to do an open flag if it's an opponent you think you can't necessarily win against. You need to do something unexpected. I would say then it's okay to do an open flag. Any other player that you are higher than or you feel you have a good chance of winning, I would even say any player that you have never played before, I would do a closed flag against. I would only do an open flag in the case of a player that you think you cannot beat unless you do something really kind of crazy. Now, maybe a reason for that is because every time I seem to use open flags, it gets like scouted when I'm winning, which is really sad. But I think that's just my opinion about it. I'm not a huge fan of them. I will only use them if I think I can't really beat this player by doing anything else, or I think I am not favored to win, really, without doing something like that. So that's open flags. Next thing I want to talk about, clustering high pieces. So, generally it's going to be a bad idea to put all your power pieces on one side, putting them all on one side like this. Whether it's your general and your marshal, or whether it's going to be like your general and your colonels, like both these on all these on one side, it's going to be really hard to defend all these pieces. You're going to want to really spread it out and have a balanced setup. I think that's going to be a much better way. I mean, to be in the name of unpredictability, you can put stuff together, but generally it's going to be better to separate them. it's going to be really hard to defend if you have all your pieces together. And if you're one of those blitzers that has literally everything together, and you show a marshal and a colonel and you just keep blitzing, your opponent's going to get the idea. They're going to say, okay, probably everything's over here, so they're going to rampage all this. I think it's better in general, especially when playing someone for the first time, to have more of a balanced setup, okay? And that can mean a marshal here, general in the center, like these two here, can mean they're kind of both here. Generally, you're going to want to avoid super central positions like this, which leave the flanks vulnerable, and then flanked positions like that. Those are two things you're generally going to want to avoid. You're going to want to have them probably from here to here in this vicinity. I would say the center is okay, but this is still not ideal because your flanks are just going to be so vulnerable. So I would say don't cluster high pieces. And then leading into that, I want to talk about defending pieces. So first of all, I want to say don't defend all of your pieces, but also don't leave too many undefended. If I have a marshal here, and I have a colonel, and I have a major, and I have a major, and I'm just defending all this, and then I have this here, and every single piece is defended, this is going to get really obvious really quickly, and your opponent's going to tear through this if they know what they're doing. So don't defend every piece, okay? So like leave a major here, like leave a colonel over here that's not defended, right? Don't just have it all like robotically structured so every piece is defended, because that's going to get really predictable. And leading into that, I would say this is something I've done a lot of times, is do like the 2-rank defense. So like if I have a colonel or if I have a lieutenant here, I'm going to guard it with a major because that's 2 ranks up. So if they take it with a captain, then I got it. Same thing over here. If they take it with a major, I got it with my colonel. That's something that I've found myself doing a lot before. That's something you probably want to do it some, but you want to mix stuff up. So like put a sergeant and like put a colonel behind it, right? Like have a lieutenant, you know, have a general behind it, okay? And even you can guard like a major with a major if you want to be like confident and try to bluff your way out of it. And do things unexpected like that. Do things unexpected, not just guarding every piece by 2, because then your opponent's going to start to get the idea, okay, well every piece they have backed is by a piece 2 ranks up, so why don't I just hit with a piece 2 ranks up, and then that can result in a loss of pieces. Okay, so next thing I want to talk about is putting spy placement. So I would say generally you're going to want to avoid putting your spy next to a bunch of like junk pieces. Like if this is what your side looks like and you decide to put your spy here, this is bad for 2 reasons. First of all, the marshal is probably not going to worry himself about coming over here and taking a bunch of junk pieces. Second of all, you can have just like a lieutenant and a scout or a captain that comes down and wants to lotto, and they're going to get all this, including your spy, which is really bad. So I would say you're going to want to put your spy at least next to something, you know, somewhat powerful, like this, okay? Like this is okay. I would prefer like that there, because then they can't come down this flank. But something like this is okay, but having a bunch of junk pieces by your spy, or putting your spy on your junk side, is really not a great idea, because it's probably not ever going to net you a marshal. Maybe, like I said, in the name of unpredictability, doing it just because you want to be unpredictable. Okay, I can see that. But otherwise, I would say don't do that. Okay. Next thing I want to talk about is like when you pinch spots in your setup. So let's say we have something like this. So I have my flag here, and I have lots of pieces over here. So let's fill this in. Let's get some good pieces in here. Alright, so let's say I have this, and then, you know, I'll have like a couple pieces on this side, whatever. Okay, so let's say this is the situation. Now, this is your opponent's colonel. He comes down and he sits right there. What's the problem with this? The problem with this is you can't move any of these pieces without them dying. Okay? So this is what I would call a pinch spot, okay? You've made your setup in a way where these pieces can get pinched off and you can't move them. So easy fix here is to do that, because then your sergeant can run up and either your sergeant runs up, the colonel does nothing, and you can eventually escape one by one, or the colonel chases the sergeant and then that lets you come out here. So that's going to be something that's more upper level. Try to avoid these pinch spots. I know sometimes if I have the power piece, like the upper piece, but I'm down in these lower pieces, I'll try to find what I think might be a pinch spot and try to apply pressure and try to force them to maybe like sacrifice a piece just to get these out or something like that. So I would say that's going to be something you're going to want to avoid in your setup, is a pinch spot like that. Next thing I would say you want to avoid is to doing the same thing over and over. Mix it up. Be unpredictable. So this goes into being unpredictable. Like if you're playing someone for like 20th time, do something unpredictable. Do something they will not expect. Do something that you don't often do. And when I say do something you don't often do or something unexpected, you can even maybe break some of these like rules or guidelines that I've laid out today. I wouldn't play like that regularly, but I say like in a one single game scenario, it's okay to do that. And I would say you can also try to do that if you need to mix up your play because the game is like not exciting or getting old for you. If you need to like invigorate your interest in the game, take a break, come back, do some new different things, try different play styles, things like that. I think that's good to help. Last thing I want to talk about is place pieces without a purpose. It's going to be a big one. I would say when I try to make a setup, especially if I'm really thinking about the setup, like if I'm making a setup for a tournament or something, I'm going to like label each piece in the setup, say, okay, end game, mid game, late mid game, early game, and then like piece I'm going to advance with. I'm going to try to categorize them like that so that I know what their purpose is and I can use them the best that I should. And especially I'm going to say like end game pieces would be like flag fakes and stuff and your actual flag. Early game pieces is going to be pieces that you want to attack with, pieces you plan on attacking with. I feel like categorizing pieces like that can be beneficial because it really helps you know what you are going to do with that setup and how you're going to play it. And I feel like that's really useful because you want to place every piece with a purpose. You don't just want to throw pieces on the board and not know what they're going to do or how you're going to play them or how you might defend them. So I would say doing something like that is really important as well. So I think this video's gone on long enough. I think I'll probably wrap it up here. Now I know I haven't included a lot of platitudes like, okay, put your general next to your spy. Don't put all your scouts up front. Put most of your miners in the back. Those are all true things. I think most of you will probably know those things. I would say for the general and the spy, most of the time, you're going to want to probably keep your general at least close to your spy, even if not completely backed by it, because a lot of people will actually just hit the general with their marshal if they have the chance. Other than that, I think that's about it. So let me know in the comments below if this was beneficial. Like I said, nothing of this is too crazy. Nothing of this is amazing. This is just things that I set out for myself when I make a setup. I think the thing that distinguishes lower level and upper level setups is going to be the unpredictability level. Lower level setups, lower level setups are also going to have flaws that don't adhere to like things that I've said. They'll put a bunch of bombs up front. But upper level setups will have the element of surprise. I think that's the most important thing. Be unpredictable. Try new things. Even if it means breaking one of the guidelines I've said, because I feel like that's the best way to kind of get out of a playing rut and start playing better. Anyway, let me know if this video has been helpful. I hope it has. I'm not sure because I feel like I don't have anything tremendous to share on this subject, but just a few things that I try to think about when I make a setup. So let me know in the comments below, and I would appreciate that. Alright, thank you. See you guys in the next video.